Welcome to this special training, the ultimate guide to acing any job interview. Now let's get started. Sooner or later, everyone must face the daunting task of interviewing for a job. Whether it's for just a job to keep your bills paid, or if it's the dream job you've always wanted, there are many things that you have to remember before you can get that job that you so desire. Most people assume that the most important part of a job interview is showing up well-groomed, but there is more to it than that. Everything that you could ever want may be riding on your behavior at a job interview. The smallest thing can mean the difference between your having a new job or you're still pounding the pavement trying to score a new interview. It is common knowledge that it is generally the smallest detail that causes people to fail a job interview. The fact that you can score an interview at all shows that you already have the right stuff for the job. However, scoring the interview is merely the first step in the journey to getting the job of your dreams. This training is your comprehensive guide to winning that job that you so crave. You will have all of the knowledge required to get your body through that door and ace any interview. In this training, you will learn how to prepare for the interview so that you're at your best for it, how to conduct yourself during the interview, the do's and don'ts of any interview, closing the interview as a winner, common interview questions, questions that you should ask your interviewer, the post-interview follow-up strategy, plus lots more. How to get the interview. Scoring the interview for the job that you want doesn't have to be rocket science. Sometimes you can score that interview by simply making a phone call. There are many ways that people go about trying to get an interview. The methods of achieving one vary by company. It is best to know what the company's application process is before taking your first step. Generally, when a company is hiring, they post an ad in the newspaper or an online job bank. How to contact them is usually included in the ad as well. You don't want to email a resume to a company that is requesting that you walk in with your resume. You don't want to call a company that requires a faxed resume, etc. Ignoring their initial contacting information will guarantee that you will not get that interview, because you have already proven that you can't follow simple directions. Sometimes you can get a job lead from a friend before the job has been posted. If this is the case, you may be able to ask your friend to give the employer your resume and cover letter. If your friend doesn't actually work where the lead came from, you can try calling about the position and asking what the application procedure is. There are 4 general methods of applying for a job, and they are 1. Sending a resume, 2. Emailing your resume, 3. Faxing your resume, and 4. Walking in with your resume. Sending a resume. Some companies prefer that you mail in your resume. For this type of approach, it is best to include a cover letter with your resume. The cover letter is a basic letter that describes the position that you are interested in and a few details of your qualifications and skills. It is basically your lead-in to your resume. Before writing your cover letter, you should know to whom the letter is to be addressed. You never want to begin a cover letter with "Dear Sir" or "Madam," or "To whom it may concern," if you can possibly avoid it. It shows that you have not prepared and done your research into the company, and that you are not looking for a specific position with their company, but any job that you can get your hands on. Basically, it is disrespectful to your prospective employer. Emailing your resume. Emailing resumes is becoming a commonplace way for recruiters to get resumes. Most companies offer this method as an alternative to the others. However, there are a few tips on how you should go about it. You should attach your resume as a Word document or PDF file. These are the most common formats and what most companies will accept. The subject line should read, your name and the position you are applying for. For example, Smith, John, clerical position in brackets. This makes it easy for the recruiter to know who the email is from and what it pertains to. It also assures that your email will be read. Sometimes there are specific methods for addressing an emailed resume. Some companies have certain subject line requirements, so be sure to follow them. If your company wants you to paste your resume in the email, don't send an email with an attachment, because then your email will be deleted right away. Faxing your resume. Again, you will need to include a cover letter when you fax your resume. If you are not using your own fax machine, be sure to include your proper contact information. The rules for your cover letter are the same as for mailing your resume. Walking in with your resume. For this type of application procedure, you will want to dress appropriately. You would want to dress just like you would for an interview. Companies usually ask you to do this if you are going to be working directly with customers. They ask for a walk-in because they want to get a look at your grooming habits right away. Sometimes a walk-in will have the employer giving you a brief interview on the spot to see if they will require a formal interview later. So be on your best and most appropriate behavior. Also, walk-ins do not require you to bring in a cover letter with your resume. Your appearance is kind of like your cover letter. Sometimes you will be requested to fill out an application form as well. Smile and be polite, no matter who you are talking to. That could be the difference between getting an interview and just taking an extra trip for nothing. Telephoning for an interview. It is not particularly common anymore for companies to ask you to call them for an interview. That is usually saved for jobs that include sales or jobs that are not so easily applied for by the other methods. Telephoning for an interview is a bit common when a company requires that you be on the phone a lot. It gives them a feel for the quality and the personality of the person on the phone. When interviewing for a job over the phone, always speak in a clean and clear manner. Be polite and prepared to answer any questions that may be asked of you. If you are asked your experience or previous work experience, be prepared to answer quickly and explain how long you have been doing that type of work and give a brief description of your duties. Preparing for the interview. Once you get the call for the interview, the next thing you have to do is prepare for it. You can never over-prepare for an interview. The more prepared you are, the harder it will be to make mistakes. It is best to prepare yourself emotionally as well as intellectually for an interview. Giving a great interview is not as hard as some may think, but not as easy as others do either. Here are a few things that must be done in order to prepare for your next interview. Remember, during an interview, you are a salesman. You are there to sell yourself to your prospective employer. You want to market yourself in the most interesting way possible. Great preparation for the interview is your best bet. A salesman who is knowledgeable, friendly, and positive always gets the close. Do your research. It doesn't matter how much experience or knowledge you have about the position that you are trying to get in a company if you don't have a clue who the company is or what they do. It is disastrous to enter into an interview and not be able to tell your interviewer what their company is about. How else are you going to tell them why you feel that you would be a good addition to their company? A good and less time-consuming way to get to know about a company is to look up their website. You can get all of the general knowledge about them that way, including the names of key people and their job titles. There will be more on that in a minute. You should sift through most of their pages, including the pages that show samples of their work or products. You can also look them up in media reports if there are any. Read the articles about them and soak in as much information as possible. Another thing that would be nice to do is to check out the surrounding area around the company. It makes for a nice way to break up the interview. You could make a comment about a particular monument or vacation spot nearby. A more clever way to get a little extra information about the company is to call them on the phone and ask general questions, without referring to yourself as a potential employee. It's a nice way to get the goods on upcoming promotions and things like that. Know your contact. When called for an interview, ask to whom you will be speaking. It's nice to be able to greet your interviewer by name at the beginning of the interview without first being told who they are. It shows that you are on top of things and have prepared beforehand. You will also want to do some research on the person who will be conducting your interview. Learn what they do for the company and try to get some samples of their work or achievements in the company. If you know which department you're going to work in, you may want to get the names of your potential colleagues and superiors prior to the interview as well. This way you can get some information about their roles in the company and the types of work that they have done. Mention some of the things you learn about your potential colleagues in the interview and say how much you're looking forward to working with them in the future. If you can, give an example of their work so that you will appear more sincere and interested in the company. Practice your responses. It is best, if you are prone to nervousness, to practice giving your responses to the questions that may be asked of you. A list of the most common questions will be given later on in the training. You should practice your wording and the tone of voice that you plan to use. Try to keep your responses as brief as possible, but with as much detail as you can include. When you're trying to work out the best responses to the interviewer's questions, you'll also want to practice the art of getting your nerves under control, as well as ridding yourself of any other odd habits you may have while talking, like expressing yourself with your hands. Practice answering your interview questions with a friend. Get his or her opinion about your delivery and gestures. Perhaps your friend will have some nice insights for you to use during the real interview. Dress the part. Pick out your outfit the day before your interview. You want to make sure that your clothes do not have any wrinkles or stains on them. Pick an outfit that best suits the type of job that you are applying for. If you are going to work in an office setting, you should dress conservatively. Soft earth tones are best for women. Try to avoid miniskirts and shirts that show too much skin. A nice dark suit is good for a man. Of course, if you are planning to work outdoors or in an artistic environment, you can dress a little more casually. Just be certain to avoid wearing denim jeans, oversized clothing, and undersized clothing. Women should try to avoid wearing too much makeup as well. It gives the wrong impression. Even in the hotter seasons, you should not wear sandals or gym shoes to an interview. It sends an unprofessional message. The same goes for hats and other accessories. Get organized. Make sure that all of the things that you will need for the interview are prepared the day before. Make a checklist of the things you'll need, if you have to. You should always have an extra resume handy during the interview. You should also bring a notepad with you to take notes during the interview if needed. Only write down the important things that you think you will need to remember. If you have a business card, have one handy. It makes it easy for the interviewer to contact you later, and it also shows that you are professional and may help the employer to remember your name. How should I act? There are many things that you can do that can take some of the pressure off during an interview. The way you behave is one of the most important. It's not all in the words that come out of your mouth, but often has a lot to do with the mannerisms that you use. Interviewers are not just wondering if you are skilled enough for the job, they are often wondering if you would fit in well with your co-workers. Your personality is a big part of your interview and can make all the difference. Here are some of the little things that you should pay particularly close attention to during an interview. You do not want to be chewing gum or breath mints during your interview. You also don't want to speak in slang during your interview either. It is unprofessional and rude. Show confidence. You cannot enter into an interview with a defeatist attitude. You cannot mope or exude too much placidity in your manner. It is not inviting and does not give the impression of a person that you would want to face every day. You want to let your interviewer know that you are equipped to perform well at your job without alienating other workers. You should point out your accomplishments in your field while remaining somewhat humble. List your accomplishments in a matter-of-fact way without going into too much detail. I know this sounds repetitive, but this point cannot be overemphasized. Understand that body language plays a large part in exuding confidence to others. Sit up straight, practice good posture, and keep your head up. Keep a positive attitude. You should always try to smile and keep a positive outlook during your interview. If you're hearing something that doesn't sound good to you, don't frown and look disgruntled. Just keep a slight smile on your face until it is time for you to say something. Then approach your interviewer with your questions or concerns when the time is appropriate. Maintain eye contact. Keeping eye contact with your interviewer is very important, especially when one of you is speaking to the other. If you are looking around the room or at the items on the interviewer's desk, you will appear uninterested. Just imagine what you would be thinking if you were speaking to him and he was looking all over the room. You would probably think that you already lost the interview. 7 body languages you should avoid. We've touched on this a little bit, but you should mind some of the common errors that many people make when they are speaking to others. I've listed some of the common things that you should avoid when sitting through an interview. Avoid fidgeting while speaking to your interviewer. It shows a lack of self-confidence. Avoid speaking while using overly expressive hand gestures. It is distracting. Avoid biting your lips in between sentences. It gives the impression that you are making things up. Do not sit with your arms crossed because it makes you appear standoffish. Do not shrug your shoulders when asked a question that you are unsure of the answer to. Instead, take a second to think about your response. Shrugging your shoulders gives the impression that you don't know the answer. Don't answer with nods and head shakes. Use your words to answer questions. Get plenty of sleep the night before the interview. You don't want to yawn in front of the interviewer. He will think that you are expressing boredom. Your first impression. First impressions can be a hard thing to get past in any situation. During an interview, you want to give the best first impression that you can. There are many small things you can do to assure that you give the best impression possible. They are as follows. You can never be too polite to the person who directs you to your waiting area when you're waiting to be interviewed. A small gesture like asking how they are doing can work wonders for you when you leave the building later. When waiting to be interviewed, sit properly and behave as if everyone passing you by is your potential interviewer. They just might be. Smile at people as much as possible. Do not act impatient or bored, even if you are. It sends the wrong message. Some interviewers will keep you waiting just to see how you handle yourself. Greet your interviewer with a firm handshake and a smile. Remain standing until your interviewer asks you to be seated. It is simply polite and shows proper etiquette. Again, dress according to the type of job that you are applying for. Show yourself to be well organized by having all the things you need for the interview. While waiting, do not eat or drink anything. Don't chat on your cell phone while waiting for your interviewer. It makes you look distracted. The do's of acing an interview. There are quite a few things that you should do and not do during an interview that could make the whole thing a lot easier for both you and the interviewer. I have listed them briefly in the list that follows. Do arrive on time, or preferably at least 10 minutes early. Do refer to the interviewer by name. Do smile and use a firm handshake. Do stay alert and act interested throughout. Do maintain eye contact at all times during the interview. Do make all comments in a positive manner. Do speak clearly, firmly, and with authority. Do accept any refreshment offered. Do promote your strengths. Don'ts of any interview. Don't be overly aggressive or egotistical. Don't spend too much time talking about money. Don't act uninterested in the company or the job. Don't act defensively when questioned about anything. Don't speak badly about your past colleagues or employers. Don't answer questions with only a yes or a no. Don't make excuses for any bad points in your work history. Don't excuse yourself halfway through the interview, even if you have to use the restroom. Don't ask for coffee or refreshments. Closing the interview. Once you have run the bases of the interview, it is still important that you end the interview well. The hard part is over, and now all that is left is for you to close out the interview in the same winning manner. Wait until your interviewer or interviewers stands up or requests that you do. Say your goodbyes. Thank the interviewer or interviewers for taking the time to see you. Offer another firm handshake and ask when you might know when you might expect to hear from them about their decision. Quick overview and extra tips that will help you ace your interview. With all of the information that was given in this training, you would think that you've learned everything there is to know about acing an interview. However, there are still a few more tips that you should know, and a few more helpful hints. You need to 1. Market your skills and related experience in the field that you're applying for. Be sure to do it in a positive way. 2. Researching the company before your interview is a good way to know where you would fit into it. It lets the employer know that you really want to be a part of the company, too. 3. Bring your list of questions with you in a folder with the company's name on it so that you don't forget them. You should also keep your extra resumes in that folder. 4. You want to describe your weaknesses as strengths. For example, saying that you are over-enthusiastic about performing at your best. 5. Since many interviewers ask you what your biggest fault may be, you should pick a fault that is actually a good thing. Try saying, "I don't take on projects that I can't give 110% on." 6. Let your interviewer bring up the topic of salary first. 7. Don't volunteer your personal opinions to your interviewer about any subject unless you are asked. 8. Try to establish a good rapport with your interviewer. Be casual but professional, and most importantly, be yourself. Common interview questions. Every interview consists of the interviewer asking you a great number of questions. Many of them are standard questions that every interviewer asks. I've listed the most common questions that you're most likely to encounter during an interview to help you get a handle on them before you go to the interview. It's always good to be prepared. By listening to these common questions that interviewers ask, you will have a leg up on the competition. You will also have time to prepare your answers so that you don't get stumped. So here is your key to acing a job interview. 1. Tell me something about yourself. Remember, say something positive. 2. How do you handle stressful situations? 3. How do you deal with criticism and stress? 4. What is your definition of success? 5. Why do you think that you would fit in with this company? This is where your research comes in handy. 6. Have you ever been fired, and why? 7. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? 8. Do you prefer to work on your own or as part of a team? 9. Why are you interested in working for this company? 10. How would you handle a difference of opinion with your colleagues or superiors? 11. Why should I or we hire you? Common questions when applying for your first job after college graduation. 1. Tell us or tell me what your most rewarding college experience was. 2. What extracurricular activities did you participate in? 3. What have you learned in college that applies directly to this job? 4. How have you prepared yourself for the transition from college to the workplace? 5. Are you going to graduate school? If so, do you plan to continue working as well? 6. How do you plan to manage graduate school and working? 7. Did you get any hands-on experience in college? 8. How do you feel that college has prepared you for this job? 9. Have you ever done an internship that helped to prepare you for this type of work? 10. What do you think is the best asset that you could bring to the company? Now let's discuss questions that you should ask your interviewer. Just as you will be fielding questions from your interviewer, it is best to ask a few of your own. It shows that you are genuinely interested in working there and that you have some concerns of your own. It also shows that you feel relatively certain that this is the place for you. Asking the right questions to your prospective employer will show him or her that you are serious about your efforts to work for their company and that you are an organized individual. You should steer clear of asking any personal questions or any questions that are not directly job-related. If you wish, you may jot down some of the answers that you are given for reference later on. Keep your questions simple and polite. Make sure that you are asking direct questions about the job or the work environment. Here are some examples of questions that you should ask your prospective employer. 1. Why is this position available right now? 2. How many times has this position been filled in the past 5 years? 3. What should the new person do that is different from what the last person who had this position did? 4. What would you most like to see done in the next 6 months? 5. What are the most difficult problems that this job entails? 6. How much freedom will I have in the decision-making process in this job? 7. What are my options for advancement? 8. How has this company succeeded in the past? 9. What changes do you envision in the near future for this company? 10. What do you think constitutes success in this job? Questions employers cannot ask. Just as there are many questions that an interviewer can ask, there are many that he cannot ask. Some questions are illegal to ask. Many people don't realize that there are questions that are off-limits to employers. That is why I felt that it was important to include them. When or if you do encounter some of these questions, there are ways that you can choose to respond to them. Since some people would probably answer them, it's good for you to know that you don't have to answer these kinds of questions. You can simply ask how those questions pertain to the job you're applying for. Here is a list of the questions that are illegal for an interviewer to ask. 1. Questions about your age are not allowed during an interview because it should not be a factor in the hiring decision. 2. Questions about your marital status are inappropriate and can easily be mistaken for sexual harassment. This also applies to questions such as whether or not you have children, your child care plans, etc. This type of question also includes any other aspect of your personal life that should not affect your chances of being hired. 3. Questions about your personal health are also off-limits. 4. Questions about your ethnicity should not be asked by an interviewer or answered by the person being given the interview. 5. Your sexual preference cannot be a factor in your chances of being hired either. This type of question should not be asked. 6. Whether or not you have disabilities is a question that should not be asked either. 7. Your arrest record is information that doesn't have to be answered. All an interviewer can ask you is whether you have ever been convicted of a crime. They cannot ask you what for or how many times. 8. Basically, personal information cannot be asked for by an interviewer. It is illegal and you do not have to respond. The post-interview follow-up. Now that the interview is over, the hard work is over, but you still have to follow up on the interview later. Sending a thank you note is the best way to start. The thank you note should convey your thanks for their time and consideration in seeing you. If you haven't heard from the employer within a week, you should call the office to ask if they have reached a decision yet. This is not being pushy, it shows your enthusiasm and persistence. If they haven't reached a decision, ask when you might expect to hear from them. If they don't give an answer, try again in another week, and so on. What employers are looking for. When an employer decides to conduct an interview with you, there are certain things that they are looking for from you. Naturally, you are likely to focus on these things during an interview, but you should remember all of the tips in this training, because following these tips is what's going to make the interviewers see all these things in you. Since everybody wants to have a leg up when it comes to an interview, it naturally seemed to be appropriate to let you in on what the employers are evaluating you on during an interview. So here is that list. Your enthusiasm. Employers want to know that you are willing and eager to be a part of their company. Being fully stocked with knowledge about the company is a surefire way to show your enthusiasm. Your ability to speak clearly. If you come into an interview mumbling and speaking slang, a prospective employer will not see you as a professional. Showing your teamwork skills. During your interview, you should show an example of your ability to work as part of a team. Leadership skills. You should show your leadership abilities by approaching your interview with an offensive mindset. Problem-solving ability. Employers need to know that you can handle yourself when a problem arises. Work-related experience. You definitely want to show that you have some experience in the field already, so that the employer knows that you will not be overwhelmed. Community involvement. Employers love to see that you have done volunteer work. It shows that you take pride in your community and are willing to be a team player. Company knowledge. Again, employers like to see that you have done your research about their company. It shows that your interest in working for them is sincere. Flexibility. Employers want to know that you are able to go with the flow. It proves that they can depend on you later. Ambition and motivation. Ambitious people are generally motivated enough to make great improvements in the company as they are working their way up the ladder. Ambition usually means more money for the company. People skills. Your ability to get along with others is very important to an employer. They need to know that you won't ruffle any feathers when you are hired. Professional appearance. Nobody wants a slob working in their office. Be certain to dress appropriately for the job that you are applying for. Ability to multitask. This is getting to be a very necessary skill in the workplace. Most days you will be required to multitask at work. Even if you are not, Employers need to know that you can do it without freaking out on them. Facility with computers. These days, just about every company in the world is running on computers. The ability to work a computer with at least a minimal amount of skill is important. It is best to keep a leg up on the most common office software like Microsoft Office, Microsoft Outlook, QuickBooks, and Salesforce.com. Reliability. Employers want dependable and reliable people to work for them. Your ability to arrive on time is a good place to start when trying to prove that you possess this quality. How employers evaluate your performance. Employers are generally monitoring and evaluating you on 3 skill sets during an interview. Those 3 skill sets can easily be broken down into these sections. Content skills. These are the skills that are directly related to performing a specific job in your profession. You get these skills by learning your craft in an accredited school through specialized training, work experience, attaining a degree, and internships. This shows an employer that you have acquired all of the knowledge that you will need to perform your job efficiently. If you do not have these types of skills, you can simply express that you are looking into specialized training and/or would be willing to start. It may not be exactly what the employer is looking for, but it shows that you have initiative. Functional skills. These are the skills that reflect your ability to work with others and how you process and evaluate data. This is where an employer decides whether or not you are a team player. You can display this skill by displaying your past employment record and accomplishments that are directly job-related. Generally, an employer will get an idea of your ability to work with others based on your reasons for leaving previous jobs, such as whether or not you were fired before. If you have been fired before, don't lie about it, and do not act bitter about it when discussing the reason. This will not benefit you in the end. Be forthcoming and sincere. Express that it was a learning experience for you, and tell them what you learned from it. That reflects well on your temperament. Adaptive skills. This refers to your general personality and temperament. It also covers your self-management skills. During your interview, the employer will be evaluating you on your general ability to get along with him or her. Your general personality traits are monitored during the interview. When faced with a difficult question, you do not want to get defensive or angry. Just take a few seconds to think about what you should say, rather than saying something you will regret. If you must, simply explain that you are a little nervous, so that you can buy a few extra seconds to answer. You want to appear at ease, or as much so as you can, during your interview. You want the employer to think that you anticipated everything that he or she was going to say. Even if you are terrified of giving the wrong answer, do not let them see you sweat. Final review. By now you have learned everything you need to know before you enter into an interview. During this training, you have acquired the skills needed to get and ace any interview that you go on. You have made the right move in choosing this training as your guide. As promised, you are going to approach your next interview with a leg up on the competition. By now you have learned how to prepare for the interview, the best way to behave during an interview, how to make a great first impression, how to dress for success, how to close an interview, what questions you will most likely be asked during an interview, what questions you should ask during an interview, what questions cannot be asked during an interview, how to follow up on your interview, and what specifically employers are looking for from you. You have learned everything you need to know in this guide, and probably a little more than that. Don't worry. If you have listened to and used all of the information in this training, you have increased your chances of getting that job by 100%. If you are due to have an interview, you've already learned how to ace the interview just by listening to this training, so relax and go get that job.